My name is Bill Jones. I'm with recapturefederalism.com and operationofficialmisconduct.com. Today I'm going to be speaking about and discussing the Washington's farewell address and political parties and what he thought of it and talked about it, wrote about it. Showing the address. This comes from, they printed up a wonderful, the Avalon Project. It's from Yale Law School. They have a lot of the laws and copies of laws and legal programs and what have you, going all the way back to ancient times. And of course they have all the copies of the American documentation from the constitutional period and Declaration of Independence. And I'm showing it today. This one here is Washington's farewell address. And the title of my discussion today is the Political Party Supremacy. And when we go, let's see what George said back in 1796. This is at the end of his 8 years of presidency, September of 1796. He wrote the first draft, in my understanding, and then he had help and assistance from his good friend Alexander Hamilton to fine-tune it, and did a very good job on it. And we will continue. And we're now looking at these 7 paragraphs where he talks about political parties. He has very little good to say about political parties, as you will see. If you find another copy of the Washington's farewell address, this area here, these 7 paragraphs, if they're numbered, you'll see it at 19, paragraph 19 through 25, I believe. And well, let's see what he says. Right here, I have already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on geographic discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. And he continues. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its root in the strongest passions of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or repressed. But in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness and is truly their worst enemy. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which is in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism, but this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries of which result gradually from incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. Without looking forward to an extremity of this kind, which nevertheless ought not to be entirely out of sight, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of wise people to discourage and restrain it. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasional riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influence and corruption, which finds a facilitated access to the government itself through the channels of party passions. Thus the policy and the will of one country are subjected to the policy and will of another. There is an opinion that parties in free countries are useful checks upon the administration of the government and serve to keep alive the spirit of liberty. This, within certain limits, is probably true. And in governments of monarchical caste, patriotism may look with indulgence, if not with favor, upon the spirit of party. But in those of popular character, in governments purely elective, it is a spirit not to be encouraged. From their natural tendency, it is certain there will always be enough of that spirit for every salutary purpose, and there being constant danger of excess, the effort ought to be, by force of public opinion, to mitigate and assuage it. A fire not to be quenched, it demands a uniform vigilance to prevent the bursting into a flame, lest, instead of warning, it should consume. And the important last paragraph concerning this subject, the 7th paragraph. It is important likewise that the habits of thinking in free countries should inspire caution in those entrusted with its administration, to confine themselves within their respective constitutional spheres, avoiding in the exercise of the power of one department to encroach upon another. The spirit of encroachment tends to consolidate the powers of all departments in one, and thus to create, whatever the form of government, a real despotism. A just estimate of that love of power and proneness to abuse it, which predominates in human heart, is sufficient to satisfy us of the truth of this position. The necessity of reciprocal checks in the exercise of political power, by dividing and distributing it into different depositories, and constituting each the guardian of the public weal against the invasions by the other, has been evinced by experiments ancient and modern, some of them in our country and under our own eyes. To preserve them must be necessary as to institute them. If, in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be any particular wrong, let it be corrected by an amendment in a way which the Constitution designates. But let there be no change by usurpation, for through this, in one instance, may be instrument of good, it is a customarily weapon by which free governments are destroyed. The precedents must always generally overbalance in permanent evil any partial or transient benefit, which the use can at any time yield. And how important is that last paragraph? Notice it's up to the people to decide whether they want political powers, political party supremacy. There has been no amendment. The President, Washington, talks about a constitutional action, an amendment, to have political parties. There has never been an amendment. One has never been proposed. What has happened is what he talks about that should never happen. A usurpation. A usurpation, that word means a seizure of rights. And what has happened in our country, the evil two-party system and the evil parties have usurped the power of the people. And we have a despotism. And we need to correct that. And the people are the ones that can correct that through nonviolent means. And let's see how we can do that. I have an idea.